Welcome back to the Nate Wenke Podcast. And today I have Harley back on. He's a common guest here. And today we're going to do an episode on essentially a Q&A, an Ask Me Anything episode. I thought this would be kind of fun, see what kind of questions we get, who knows where we're going to go. I've looked at the questions briefly, but I did pretty much zero preparation for them, which I think makes it a little bit more fun. So we'll kind of see what happens. But Harley, thanks for coming on, and you want to start us off here?
Yes, I do. This first one might be an easy one, but maybe not. So, Nate, do you think the Bible is metaphorical at times? I personally believe a lot of the stories are metaphor or allegory that are used by rabbis, priests, masons, and other priestly castle to keep common people ignorant of esoteric knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Priestly cast, by the way. But,
thanks.
You're good. Well, the first part of the question is pretty easy to answer. Yes, the Bible is definitely metaphorical at times, and I actually did a whole episode essentially on that topic. So that was actually the first real episode of the podcast. So if you happen to be interested in that subject, I tried my best to cover it as best as I can. When you're dealing with scripture that's thousands of years old, that's basically impossible to do. But I gave it a whirl. So definitely metaphorical at times. The thing about the Bible is it's a collection of different types of literature that all have to be read within the context of their type. So Revelation, for example, is apocalyptic literature. Genesis is a story-based, metaphorical type of literature. And then something like Psalms or Proverbs are poetic literature. And then there's even historical accounts that you can find, specifically eyewitness accounts in the Gospel. So there are many types of literature in the Bible, and one of the biggest problems that I've encountered all the time is people just don't realize this. So in the 21st century today, we're rather caught up in a scientific worldview of the world, and the idea that something could not have literally happened but have deep underlying truth regardless is somewhat foreign to us, which is a real tragedy because it causes so much confusion about Genesis that's just, in some sense, self-created. And I've ranted about this before, but if the church would simply embrace the fact that Genesis was not meant to be read literally, I think a lot of the confusion around having a scientific worldview and also having a quote-unquote biblical worldview would evaporate. So that's a big one of mine. In terms of the second part of the question, it implies that those people knew that they were metaphorical and yet decided to avoid that fact. And I don't really know about what I think about that. I bet there were some people that recognized that the interpretation that they were portraying was patently wrong in terms of the context of the Bible. You can certainly see in history where religious organizations have intentionally kept information from the populace. I mean, this happens all the time. So, but you'd have to take it on a case-by-case basis. So certainly it happens. How much of it is motivated by malice or stupidity is always hard to tell. Generally, I err on the side of stupidity. Mm-hmm. So I guess that would be the answer to that one.
Yeah, that's good. One quick caveat.
Yeah.
Reading some of Genesis metaphorically kind of changed my life in a lot of ways. Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve, reading them not just literally, but as a metaphor. Honestly, those are like lessons that I live by daily, or at least try to live by daily. So truly recommend Jordan Peterson's biblical series. Quick plug. But
Yep.
So next question. What is the worst part about putting your thoughts into the public?
It's almost better to rank order the worst parts. But I'd say just the fact that you're going to get misinterpreted. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest one. People, especially because I do put out clips, and clips simply don't do justice to like any of the topics that I try to cover. And yet it's a form of getting people interested in the content, and it sparks that interest. So I think it's worth the cost of misinterpretation. I would say one of the things that surprises me is the level of vitriol certain people have about certain things. I actually did a whole episode about this, or that is coming out. So I'll talk a little bit more about it there, but I was quite surprised by how vehement people could be in the comment section. But at the same time, I understand the statistical and probabilistic reality of how the internet works and how it selects for, let's say, the most extreme reactions. So I understand it, but nonetheless, it still kind of surprised me. I would say the misinterpretation thing's the biggest one. The other thing is it's a little tricky with family. Because I'm talking about things that matter to me, and you could read the title of them or take bits and pieces out of it, and well, family is always a tricky one at the Thanksgiving table. So not all of them supported it, and some of them did, and some of them didn't, and that just makes things interesting. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah,
in some ways.
I bet you can.
So, what's your favorite movie, and why do you like it? Nate, the big movie guy.
Yeah, big movie guy. I don't know. I'm not a huge movie guy. I'm more of a book guy or a podcast guy. I don't know if I'd necessarily have a favorite movie. I did just watch Good Will Hunting, and that was a really good movie. I would say it got a bit of a, maybe because I somewhat related with the main character, I'd say. So it got a bit of a emotional response out of me, which is a bit rare. So that was good. That was a really good movie. I'm generally on the side of documentaries over movies. So like The Social Dilemma, one of my favorite ones.
Ooh.
So there's a couple really
What
good
is
ones
a
out
woman?
there. Yeah, that's a good, yeah, What is a Woman? Matt Walsh, highly recommend.
Yeah.
The title's hilarious, but just
Doesn't do it justice.
Just go watch the interviews that he does. It is insane.
He just asks questions. Yeah.
Just ask questions. Go watch it. Just go watch the whole thing. It's a crazy movie. So we'll end with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say 13 Hours because you always say like, oh, that's one of my favorites.
Oh,
but
yes, I kind of forgot about that one. Yeah, that's a really good movie. Like in the genre of war movies and whatnot. It kind of awakens my inner patriotism.
Nice.
So, I like it. Good movie.
Heck yeah. So, what part of your daily schedule is your favorite part of the day? What a question. That's a great one.
Good question. Well, it's a love-hate relationship, but I would say the cold plunge for sure.
I knew it.
So, yeah. Because not because of being in there. Being in there is the worst part of the day in some ways, I would say. It's ironic. But after you get out, that's the best part of the day. That feeling after you get out of that cold water, that 34-degree water, is unlike anything else I've experienced. The rush, the dopamine rush. We did a whole podcast episode on the scientific benefits and effects of intentional cold immersion. And if you're more interested, check that out. Huberman has done a bunch. Definitely the best part of the day right there. The gym is a close second. Just love the gym, but gotta say the cold plunge. So
Yeah. Sauna's up there too, but
yep, true.
And you get to see me. That might be a good part. You
Oh
know?
yeah, yep. Yeah, as if we don't see each other enough. Nah.
Oh, this one I already know.
Yep.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee. Yeah, if you know anything about me, I love coffee. I will fully admit that I am far past the point of diminishing returns in the caffeine dimension. There's no doubt there. I'm way past it, but we're just gonna carry on here, and big fan. Don't get me wrong, tea has its merits, but coffee wins. So
Yeah.
Yep.
The smell and taste, for sure. I don't even know this one. What is your longest plank?
Ooh. Well, I've never really tested this. Like, if you were to, like, say, all right, Nate, like, if you made it a competition with the boys or something, then we could really see what's going on here. I've done 4-minute planks before, so without like really testing it to my limits, 4 minutes. We'll say that. So
Yeah. Planks are sometimes like, I don't know. Sometimes it's like people say, "Oh, planks, it will help you get abs." I'm like, I almost never feel it in my abs.
Yep.
I feel it in my shoulders, and then I'm kind of like sore, and it's almost not worth it. So, yeah, I've never
Not
really
a bad
tested
exercise,
it, but yeah, I'm just biased against, I guess. But okay. One question I'm wondering is, in your opinion, what do you think the biggest problem in our country or world is right now? I guess a follow-up would be, what do you think the solution would be if there is one?
This one's hard. This is one of those questions that I would want to think about for like 30 minutes before answering. I don't know if I'd categorize it as the biggest problem, because whenever you go to the absolutes or extremes, it's tricky to know. I would argue in the U.S., probably at the root of our problems would be two things. One would be the Nietzschean view of the death of God, I would say, is that the scientific, I've talked about this at length before, the scientific revolution had many merits, but it had a destructive element, and Nietzsche recognized this, that conventional and traditional religious structures could not withstand the scientific push, and he was worried we would throw out the baby with the bathwater, or overcorrect, let's say. And I think he was dead right about that. The 20th century, in my opinion, was evidence of this. And I've talked about this at length, so I won't go into it right now. But I think that's definitely at our core, that our religious substrate and axioms and morality are quite chaotic at the moment, and we don't seem to have as much of a foundation as I think we need. Especially given the fact that we have technologies that could destroy us all. And I don't think people really realize this. Like, most people don't think about these things because, they don't want to be sad and depressed, and fair enough. But, we have thousands of thermonuclear warheads that are all pointed at each other and using very, very old technology and systems that do not have enough safety mechanisms within them. All you have to do is read about how close we came to all-out nuclear war multiple times in history. Quick side note here. One of the more crazy stories is, I don't remember the exact location, but there was a nuclear bunker, or launch site, rather, that they had a bear that was trying to climb the fence, and to climb the fence at the facility, and set off an alarm. And they thought they were under attack. This is the height of the Cold War, and they thought, they were under attack from the Soviets. And quite literally, a bear triggering an alarm almost ended the world. I don't think people realize that these things have happened and how close we've come. So we need to have a serious conversation about the implications of this. And, thermonuclear war is the most obvious one. Of course, there's AI and there's other things coming down the pipeline. But, yeah, that's the moral substrate is the biggest one. Part of that, in direct connection with that, is the decline of marriage in the United States, I'd say, is no doubt in terms of predictors for success. Everything, to a certain extent, can be traced back to marriage and stable family households. So you can look at fatherless statistics, and it's absolutely abysmal. It's terrifying. And the effects of this we're going to feel for generations. So I'd say those are our biggest problems. The follow-up, do you think there's a solution? And if so, what would it be? To the nuclear war thing, yes, I think there are proactive steps that we could take. One of which would be it's it's called a first response policy. There's probably a better way to term it. But essentially, countries would get behind the idea, and the U.S. would start this, that you would declare that you would never be the one to fire the first shot, essentially. You never intentionally launch nuclear weapons. It would only be a defensive mechanism. And that would help diffuse certain things. There's a bunch of things you could do to help eliminate them. That's probably a whole episode. In terms of the marriage problem, that's about as complicated as they come. You'd have to have a societal and cultural shift that accepted both the statistical evidence and the human psychology evidence behind the institution of marriage. And a lot of people aren't game for even that discussion. And there's about 1 million contributing variables and factors that are affecting it. So it's not a simple one to even try to tackle. But let's just say that the ideal of the feminist revolution is fundamentally wrong. It turns out that more free sex and less long-term relationships is a really bad idea. I think more people need to know that. So, yeah. There's that answer.
That's pretty good. Yeah, and the Nietzschean problem kind of undergirds a lot of the other problems. That's pretty well said. All right. Next question. Yeah, that's a deep one. And
yeah. Tough one.
Yeah. Quick random thing. I actually typed that prompt into ChatGPT real quick, and it said, as an AI language model, I do not have personal opinions or beliefs. However, I believe the biggest problem is COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh.
Way. No way. It really did that?
Yeah.
No way. Oh my word. Man, I knew it was biased, but holy moly. Did it mention the fact that tuberculosis, killed more people than COVID-19 over the last year? Did it mention that? No.
Yeah.
Did it mention the effect of malnutrition on children? Did it mention the effect of malaria on long-term development and growth? Sheesh. Biggest problem, COVID-19. Has
the birth replacement rate.
Yeah, the fact that we're running out of people. I mean, it's just a million things higher than a cold. Oh, that'll get some people mad. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Bring it on.
All right. I listened to a podcast the other day that aliens or other life is more likely to have come from the oceans. What do you believe about this?
Oh, we're going to open up the alien box. Let's just dive right in, shall we? Okay, my general opinion about aliens is that, and this is terrifying, is that, let's just say, from all mathematical and probabilistic perspectives, it seems reasonable to suggest that alien life exists somewhere in the universe. It's difficult to imagine that they don't. Now, whether or not they've actually visited us or not, I don't know. Go down that rabbit hole and have fun. It's it's a big rabbit hole. If you are interested, Bob Lazar is one of the more famous cases of someone that, frankly, it's difficult to poke holes in what he's saying. So he went on Joe Rogan and talked about it. I looked into it a little bit, but from a pragmatic perspective, it's one that I've chosen not to dwell on because what you do with it is so tricky. The implications for religious systems, the implications for your life, the implications for the idea of a soul and consciousness and life after death, that all becomes particularly fun. And I've chosen not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I think it's likely. Oh yeah, for sure it's likely. In terms of coming from the oceans, I have no bloody idea. I will say, if you've ever looked at octopuses, I think octopi. Yeah, come at me. I think they are the closest thing to alien life in existence that we know about. Let's put it that way. I mean, like, they have brains throughout their whole body. It's like they took a completely different evolutionary track than we did. It's just crazy. It's like you can make a pretty convincing case that they are conscious in some way, maybe in a different way, and that's a fun train to go down. So,
Yeah, it's who knows.
Yeah, who knows is the right answer. It's true. It's true.
Man. Yeah, sometimes you're right. Dwelling on it might not be the most useful, but it could be interesting. So who knows?
Yeah. And then they land on the White House in a year.
Yep.
That's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
So,
I've seen enough things in my life where I'm like, wow. Even this AI is like blowing my mind every minute. But
I mean, we've talked about it extensively, but
it will probably not stop.
No, it's a personal obsession.
Yeah, same.
What's coming down the pipeline is just gonna absolutely just change everything, and people just have no idea. Especially not to hit on old people here, but they just have no idea. Mm-hmm. They have no concept. My grandma can't even use email. It's insane. So that's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Next question. How do you think our country's government could be changed for the better? Democracy or something completely different that would better us for as a whole?
Better for us as a whole. Oh man. So I have a rule about politics and government and all those things is generally blame stupidity, not malice. Most of the time, people are just incompetent. So, in terms of how ineffective government is and how they always fail to reach their goals and, they constantly lie to you and all those things, that's because humans just suck. So, utopia is false, doesn't exist, at least in the way that it's been classified. I mean, in some sense, we are living in a utopia. By historical standards, we certainly are. The biggest, or the, could we change it? I mean, of course we could, is part of the answer. But I'm not, what's interesting here is I used to be far more interested in politics, like, especially when I was younger. Not that I'm that old, but I used to be far more interested in politics. And the more and more that I looked into it, the more and more I realized that I don't think most of our problems can be solved by government and politics. I think they come down to the individual. And I think they come down to your individual moral character and who you are. There's a reason that you're the cornerstone of this state. There's a reason that you have the right to free speech and that you have the right to vote. It means that you have something within you that's sovereign, that is necessary for the continuation of a country like ours. And the more that degrades, the worse place we're going to be in. So what's our biggest problem? I think it comes down to the individual moral character of the citizens that make up that country. In terms of stuff that you could change, I mean, there's a million policy suggestions. You can go look through them. Liberals have a case to be made, and so do conservatives. That's the thing with our political debate, is they're both right.
There is no debate, almost.
Yeah, well, right now that's very true. But they're both right. I mean, just at different times. Like, we need both. Mm-hmm. Liberals are needed when things get too rigid and structured that they become corrupt. And conservatives are needed because if things are going well, you don't want to radically change things because most new ideas are bad. So they're both needed. And there isn't really a way around that. One of the things that we're fortunate for in the U.S. specifically is the founders realized that human beings are self-motivated and stupid at our core. And let's just say they took more of a Hobbesian view than a Rousseauian view, which is, for people that aren't familiar with them, is essentially they didn't believe that humans were fundamentally good, which, go read some history and make up your mind about that. But regardless, is under that premise, they instituted a system of checks and balances. And we're not actually in a pure democracy. We're in a representative democracy. We're in a republic. And the biggest reason that we're in that is because the founders were terrified about the tyranny of the mob, the 51% that could club the 49% into submission. And it was very wise. Now, what I don't think they intended or predicted was the fact that certain branches of the government would voluntarily give up powers. So what's happened over the last 50 years specifically is the executive branch has continued to take powers that really were meant to be found in Congress. And what's somewhat strange is Congress just didn't really do much. And it's a slow trickle of a power structure shift, but that's one of the things that happens. The other thing that's happened is that the government size is metastasized. And, some people think that's good. As you get more bureaucracy, things get less efficient, but if you don't have enough bureaucracy, things can't get done. So it's a constant debate, hence the liberals and conservatives. I guess I kind of answered the second part of the question, democracy or something completely different that would be better for us as a whole. This is about as good as it gets, at least from what we've been able to manage. Utopian philosophies have ended in nothing but death. So you can count the philosophies by, the millions of corpses that they have left behind. So for all you Marxists out there, no. Doesn't work, okay? Utopian philosophies don't work. So how about we have a little bit of gratitude, recognize that we're probably not as good as we think we are, and work on practical solutions. So, if I had to name one, just as a bit of a tidbit here, if I had to name one policy that I'm a fan of, is there's some, I forget which state, but one state has a rule that if you are to enact a new regulation, you have to get rid of 2 previous regulations. In order to even do anything. And it's genius because it helps get rid of useless things, which otherwise you wouldn't necessarily be incentivized to do. So if I had to put that out there, that'd be probably one of my favorite policies. The other one would be ranked choice voting.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah. And in Michigan, there was a movement for it. Big fan of that. Of course, it's highly unlikely to actually happen for a number of different reasons. But just a quick overview is, at least the idea behind it is, you would assign, instead of just having one vote, you'd rank candidates by which one that you prefer the most, and then the second. And where it's been tried, it's actually been fairly successful in terms of the discourse and the debates between different political candidates. The level of vitriol and negativity has gone way down because it turns out that you actually are incentivized to give the other candidates the benefit of the doubt in a ranked choice system. So I'm a big fan of that policy. So if we had to enact it, I'd be all for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, instead of enemies, as candidates being enemies, it's we could be on the same team, vote for them. I could be your second choice. Or, instead of they're evil, I'm good. It's we're all trying. But who knows?
Yep.
Okay. This question, I was reading it and I'm not even certain what it fully means. Okay. Do you think we have a society based upon IQ?
Oh man, that could go in 10 different directions. I mean, do I think the predictive? Okay. Well, here's a fact. It's a rather inconvenient fact. It's probably the single greatest point that the liberals have, in my opinion, that the people towards the left of center have. This is the single greatest thing in their support, is that there are the 2 greatest predictors of success in America are IQ and conscientiousness. So it's it's almost so beautiful because it's the liberals say, look, man, we're not all born in the same situations. We're not all born with the same set of resources at our disposal. We should have a certain level of wealth distribution given that fact. It's fair enough, man. If you're born with a below average IQ, you are not going to do as well, statistically speaking, okay? Statistically speaking. Well, the conservatives say, like, well, if you just work hard, you can do anything. Well, they're somewhat right, because it's also one of the greatest predictors of success in America. But they're also wrong. Because if you have an IQ below 100, the probability that you're going to become a neurosurgeon is like 0. Because it's just that complicated. And it's like IQ, the IQ literature is just, it's horrible because it's rather depressing, but it's real. So do we have a society based upon IQ? Well, of course, to a certain extent. I mean, do smarter people tend to become doctors and make more money? Yes. Do less intelligent people tend to be in, repetitive jobs that require less speed and processing power and creative ability? Yes, that's true. Is that true in every scenario? Of course not. It's just broad-based statistics. Is that a bad thing? I mean, is reality bad? I mean, is the nature of humanity bad? I mean, it's hard to say. It's difficult. Like, let me put it this way. If you have a terminal illness, right? Or not terminal illness. Let's say you have a severe illness. Terminal, you're screwed. You have a severe illness. You're going to want the best surgeon, the best doctor, the best hospital possible. Okay? What that means is that some people, the people that are better at being doctors, hopefully, are going to rise to the top. And that's a consequence of conscientiousness and IQ. So it's kind of built into the cake. What do you do about it? Well, that's the debate between liberals and conservatives. How much wealth distribution is reasonable without disincentivizing people to actually pursue things? And how much emphasis should we put on the fact that you have personal agency and the ability to, transcend your current state? It's not entirely clear. That's where the debate is. And it's individual based. It's individual situations that need to be evaluated. So, given that it's a somewhat vague question, I'll end with that.
That's a good answer. Do you think the U.S. will ever split into separate countries?
Yes. Eventually. Because all things collapse. It's the lovely rule that all things eventually go to shit. That's just how it works. And I mean, from historical standards, we're a very young country. Rome was around for quite a while. A lot of countries are way older than us. So I think it's probably inevitable that at one point you split. Now, where are we at right now? Certainly there's a lot of polarization. There's no doubt about it. How much of that is a consequence of the fact that people get to be more polarized because you can say stuff online and not bear the consequences of saying stuff online in the same way? I think that has a massive role. Because before, if you went up to, your fellow mate and you told them, the things that you read in the comment section, and you did that, not only would they punch you in the face, you'd be knocked out of the tribe and then you'd starve and die. Well, nowadays, you could just sit on your computer and go say the most heinous, horrible things to as many people as you want, and effectively, you don't bear any consequence because of it. Certainly not a physical consequence.
Especially if you're anonymous, but keep going.
Yeah. Anonymity is huge. So it's inevitable. Are we in that situation now? I think it's unlikely. I mean, are we more polarized than we were than during the Civil War? I don't know, people actually got out of their basements and got guns and killed each other. Are we at that point? No. So, depends on what you mean by polarization. Maybe you could make this argument. Maybe we are more polarized politically, but no one has enough of a spine to get up and do anything violent about it. That's probably the most accurate answer. because no one wants to actually get up and do things. I mean, look at gym statistics. It's pretty dismal.
Obesity statistics.
So, I guess that'll do for an answer for that one.
Ooh, this one's interesting. If you had to predict the time frame from present day for when sentient AI becomes a reality, when would that be? And how would this affect jobs for human-run industries?
Okay, that's a monster of a question. Okay, there's a premise in the first part that assumes that sentient AI will eventually become a reality. I'm not convinced on that. There's a fascinating debate in the AI community about whether or not consciousness or sentience is a consequence of increased processing power. Essentially, is intelligence simply a function of your level of processing power, or is consciousness something else? Is consciousness disconnected in a fundamental way from processing speeds? And the answer to that is I have no bloody idea. We don't know anything about consciousness as far as I'm concerned. We could fill whole libraries with books on things about consciousness that we're going to discover, or not discover rather. The amount of stuff that we do know about consciousness is very limited, and it definitely has some correlation with processing power, but it's not clear how strong that is, and again, whether or not it's simply a function of that entirely. So let's assume that sentient AI does become a reality. When do I think it would happen? Within my lifetime, certainly. And again, it just depends on what you mean by sentience. It depends on what you mean by consciousness. And considering that we really just don't even have that great of an idea of what that actually means, it's tricky to know. Already, ChatGPT is infinitely smarter than me. I mean, this is the thing with AI. I mean, your calculator is infinitely smarter than you. It's narrow, but it is. So it's tricky to know. You know, is it at what level of general intelligence do you get something that is conscious, that's capable of, abstracting upon itself? I don't know. If I had to put my foot in a particular camp, I'd say that we're going to have AI that, from all of our available metrics, are conscious. But I don't know if that means on some fundamental level they are, because they won't inhabit a biological body. But maybe I'm also wrong about that. So, in short, I really don't know to that first one. To the second one, how would this affect jobs for human-run industries? Well, basically all industries are human-run. But I think the bigger question there is how would this affect jobs? Well, the answer to that is obvious. I mean, as AI continues to get more and more advanced, the more repetitive your job is, and the simpler it is, the greater chance that it's going to go bye-bye. You're on the chopping block first. And this is something that I've brought up before, but there was a meme a while ago, learn to code, and it's one of the most, it's so ironic because coding, learning coding has been seen as this automatic skill that's in demand. And it's true, it is in demand. But AI, little did we realize this, it learned coding so fast. AI is way better at coding right now than even the best coders. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't need coders to implement it and understand it and all those kind of things. But right now, from a cost perspective, if you're a software development company, you're investing in spending as much time as you possibly can learning how to use AI to code for you. It just makes sense.
Yeah, 'cause software developers are expensive.
Yeah, that's an expensive salary. you're going to want to get rid of that. So, I mean, you can go pretty far down this train of the consequences of AI. And one of the things that I do worry about is so much of the meaning that we derive from life is based upon what we do. What happens when you don't have anything to do? And I do think that's inevitable. Now, to frame the problem, it's like it's a hell of a lot better to not have anything to do than to be starving. So, like, again, we want more intelligence, we want
more wealth,
greater efficiency, more wealth. We want these things, but they do pose a different set of challenges that, especially from an evolutionary perspective, we've never even had to consider. So it's an open, I mean, this box has been opened, and I don't think it'll ever be shut. It's just going to continue to expand. And if you know anything about exponential curves, that helps frame this as well, because we are on that exponential curve. And what's coming down the pipeline, I can't say this enough, is going to absolutely blow our minds. So,
throwback to Nate Wenke Podcast, episode 9.
Yeah.
Featuring me, exponential distributions.
True. Good episode. Mm-hmm.
All right. This could be a final, but I might throw a final question in just in case.
Sure.
All right. So this is the second to last.
Have at it.
How has podcasting / interviewing people shaped or changed your worldview?
Well, in a number of ways, I suppose. Just in a, how I spend my time kind of way. Like, I didn't really mess with social media. I try to stay off of it. I've had Instagram deleted for a long period of my life, for a number of reasons, just as a proactive defense mechanism to avoid getting sucked in and wasting time, because the wasting time statistics on screen time use is terrifying. So I guess I just had never really dipped my toe in this ocean, let's say. And so that's kind of opened my eyes to like what's going on in the social media dimension. The other thing is I didn't quite realize how vitriolic people could be, so that's interesting. Another thing that's interesting is how people that you think are your friends, sometimes when you do something new and creative and like you kind of put yourself out there, they're all for it. They're like, let's go. They're hyping you up. Sometimes they disappear. And, there's different reasons for that. One thing is that when you do something new and try to better yourself, sometimes your friends, the people around you, don't like that, because then they realize that they're not doing it, or they're not in that same mindset. So I'm talking more broadly speaking. I'm not necessarily saying that's totally happened here, and it's very complicated, but it's an interesting thing to think about. And yeah, it's kind of made me think about that quite a bit. I'd say those are the main things, worldview wise. It's not like it's been massive change. I don't particularly like the amount of time that I spend on social media now. And that's one con, I'd say. Mm-hmm. But in the endless cost-benefit analysis that I keep doing for this thing, I think it's worth it. So, I'm going to keep going here. See what happens.
Yeah, I've tried to look up apps that like post things for you, but it's just not as intuitive. It doesn't you can't add as many features that boosted up the algorithm as easily, like audio or hashtags or whatever. So it's like, I don't know, maybe it's screen time limit for apps. I've maybe debated. I haven't tried it, but just as an idea. But all right, maybe a final question.
Sure.
Harley, the optimist, coming in.
Here we go.
So, what is something, or what do you look forward to most about having this podcast? Like, when you think of the future and what this could be, like, what makes you smile?
Putting out information that's genuinely helpful and life-changing, I'd say, is probably the end goal. Mainly because that's exactly what I experienced with podcasts. Is I found people, specifically Jordan Peterson, that fundamentally changed my life for the better. And their presentation of what I would call deep underlying truths was so powerful and was exactly what I needed. And if the more of that, the better, as far as I'm concerned. The more of impacting people positively, the better. And whether or not I'm capable of doing that is, who knows? I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. But I certainly want to give it a try. And I mean, do I have anything better to do? Like, than try to positively impact people? Like, I can go make another extra buck in the time frame, but I don't see anything better I could do with my time than that. And then I guess the question is like, well, how do you do that? And well, it's not always clear, but I think this is one potential way to do that. So I'd say that.
Nice. Well, you've certainly impacted me in a positive way, so
Thanks,
I have faith.
Yeah, I know you do. Yep. That's glad we keep you around. The optimist. We kind of balance each other out a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's good. All right, thanks for interviewing me. This was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was.
Some rapid fire questions. Hopefully my answers weren't too stupid, but I think it was fun, and thanks for doing it.
Yeah.
And one quick side note is, if people happen to have made it this far, which is unlikely, but if they had, if you want me to do more of these, let me know, because I think it's kind of fun. And yeah, I'll do more if I get enough people saying do more. But,
yeah, it's a great idea.
So
I might have to try it out. We'll see. But who knows? All right. Well,
thanks all for
having me
listening.
on. Yeah.
And yeah, thanks for coming on, buddy.